Hey guys, it's Paradise, and today we've got a special video for you. We'll be taking a look at the past, present, and future when it comes to our beloved Monster Hunter franchise, recounting old mechanics, both good and bad, and overall seeing just how far the series has come. We're going to include every game, including the spin-offs, but we quickly realized there was just too many to cover in one video. But if a standalone video on all of the games that we've missed out interests you, then do let us know in the comments below. Before we move on though, a quick disclaimer: we were unsure whether to put Monster Hunter Frontier on this list or not. While it started as a second generation game, it continued over many of the different generations, receiving updates over the span of years. Ultimately, given its size, we've decided to exclude it from the list, but as mentioned, keep your eyes peeled for a breakdown in a future video. With all that out of the way though, let's get started, and drop a like below if you enjoy this kind of video. So the game that started it all, Monster Hunter, originally released on PlayStation 2 way back in March of 2004. Initially it released in Japan, and Monster Hunter was born as part of a plan by Capcom to create different games focused around online play. That's right, the first ever Monster Hunter game actually had an online mode. What's more is the original Japanese version had some major differences when compared to the eventual international releases. For example, there were only 5 weapon types available to use: the Greatsword, Sword and Shield, Lance, Hammer, and Bowgun, which originally lacked the heavy and light distinction. Luckily for us, the game was an absolute hit over in Japan, perhaps due in part to the unique skill-based mechanics and the hunting simulation gameplay, as well as the game taking inspiration from staples such as Jurassic Park for the 17 large monsters that were available to hunt, for Berserk with things like the armor and weapon designs, and Studio Ghibli among many others for the world building. Despite being the first game, the core DNA of the series was already there, with things like low and high rank, armor skills, crafting, items, and of course, hunting monsters. Monster Hunter would reach the West in September of that same year, but this version had some new features. On top of some quality of life updates where inventory and box management were concerned, the international version would also see the bowgun split into its recognizable light and heavy version, as well as the addition of a new weapon that would come in the form of dual blades. Although it is good to note that they were originally called dual swords. Interestingly, they were actually a branch off from the sword and shield crafting path as opposed to its own weapon type, requiring you to upgrade into them. Despite having an arguably superior version with these extra features added in, Monster Hunter did not sell nearly as well in the West, in part due to the lack of advertising. But despite this setback, Capcom would go on to continue to develop the series further. This brings us to Monster Hunter G, the first ever expansion in the series, and the origin of the staple G rank, or Master rank as it's known these days. Due to the lack of traction that Monster Hunter had internationally, this game was exclusive to Japan, releasing 9 months after the first in January of 2005. It had a ton of new features, including the improvements in the international version of Monster Hunter, as well as introducing things such as subspecies, with 14 of them in total, and Azure Rathalos making his debut as the flagship monster of this game. On top of that, armor skills got a rework, changing from their unique iteration in the original to being based on a point system, which vets will recognize as having been the staple up until Monster Hunter World. As mentioned, one of the major changes with the addition of G rank is the addition of brand new content to the game, such as more challenging quests, new armor, and weapons. But on top of that, it was the first time both blue and white sharpness were added in the game, allowing for further gear progression than ever before. An early version of the arena was also known as the Training School, which was added in, letting you take on monsters with pre-selected gear sets, although there was no time attack element to the gameplay just yet. Monster Hunter G would also have a Wii re-release in 2009, and came bundled with this awesome custom classic controller. The port wasn't a one-to-one copy, having benefited from a ton more quality of life features, and the more interesting additions of the Wii version were things like updated movesets for the weapons, with second generation moves like the Greatsword charge being added in, and you could even unlock different outfits for Poogie. Almost a year later, Monster Hunter would make possibly one of the most important decisions when considering the franchise's success. On December 1st of 2005, Monster Hunter Portable would come out for the PSP in Japan. While being heavily based on Monster Hunter G, the main feature of this game was its portability, allowing hunters to play on the go, which was an absolute game changer. You could now more easily play with friends, and given that you had the game at your fingertips wherever you would go, it was much more viable to play throughout the day. This played immensely into the success of the game, and not long after, the international version known as Monster Hunter Freedom was then released. While it wasn't an overnight success in the West, unlike the first game, it did do much better, managing to outsell both Monster Hunter and Monster Hunter G, breaking well over 1 million copies sold. Freedom wasn't just a port of G though, it introduced Yangaruga for the first time, as well as the first iteration of the farm. The previous online hub of Mineguard was replaced by the Guild Hall, where you could also accept harder guild quests designed for multiple players, as well as new treasure hunt quests. These were 2-player only quests that didn't allow you to take any items in with you, but in return you could find random items from gathering nodes dotted around the map. Finding these treasures and turning them into the box would give you a chance at rare rewards. The game also introduced the Feline Kitchen, as well as the first of the series defining cooking cutscenes. Now to kick off the second generation, Monster Hunter 2 or DOS was a Japanese-only release for the PlayStation 2. It was a significant expansion to the franchise, introducing seasons and a day-night cycle that would affect the available quests and resources. It introduced numerous staple monsters to the series, such as Kushala, Teostra, and Rajang, and brought us 4 new weapon types: the Longsword, Gun Lance, Hunting Horn, and Bow. Decorations were another addition new to this game, and the world itself felt much more fleshed out. The game added new locations and new characters, such as His Immenseness the Giant Wyvern, who watches over Dundorma. DOS also featured a unique PvP mode called Grand Tournament. Hunters would raise captured monsters and then compete to slay the other group's monster before theirs could be slain in an arena-style combat. As a fun fact, it was also the start of the barrel arm wrestling minigame, so that's just good to know. Monster Hunter Freedom 2, known as Portable Second in Japan, was the next game to be released and introduced the second generation to fans worldwide. Similar to Freedom, it was heavily based on the previous title, this time Monster Hunter 2, but came with some differences. Interestingly, not everything from Monster Hunter 2 was ported over, like the Elder Dragon Yamasukami being absent and the day-night cycle being removed in favor of specific night quests instead. We did, however, get the introduction of the fearsome Tigrex, or Tigrex depending how you want to say it, the flagship for this title, alongside the equally iconic Akantor and less so Geodrome. Over a year later though, Monster Hunter Portable 2nd G would be released in Japan. It's better known in the West as Monster Hunter Freedom Unite. This game was the biggest in the series so far. Similar to the other expansion or G games, this was an updated version of Freedom 2 with brand new equipment, mechanics, and monsters, but Freedom Unite stands out for the sheer amount of content that was added in. With 7 new monsters, including the fan favorite Nagakuga, 4 new subspecies, purple sharpness, and literally hundreds of new quests, it was easily the biggest expansion of the franchise at the time. Another notable addition was the Feline Comrade system, a sort of precursor to the Palico system of the newer games that let you hire several felines to help you on solo hunts, although you could only bring one with you at a time. There were several different skills that they could learn, as well as different fighting styles and temperaments that would affect how your companion would act while on the hunt, and you could train them in order to raise their stats. With all of that and more, it's really no wonder that Freedom Unite is looked back on with nostalgia. And to be fair, it was probably many veteran hunters' first foray into the series, so apart from some questionable hitboxes, we're looking at you Plesioth, it certainly helped Monster Hunter catch on in the West. When it comes to switching things up though, Monster Hunter Tri did exactly that. Despite being the start of the third generation of Monster Hunter, instead of adding on to the existing base like the previous games, Tri saw an opportunity to start something fresh. It did this by removing the most established monsters up to this point, bar Rathalos, Rathian, and Diablos, instead replacing the others with 15 new monsters. Staples like Deviljho, Lagiacrus or Lagiacrus depending how you want to say it, and even Elatrion all got their start in Tri. The Feline Comrade system was then replaced with the Shakalaka companion called Cha-Cha, who you could equip with different masks and abilities to help you on your solo hunts. This is also the origin of the infamous underwater combat, a divisive mechanic among hunters pretty much everywhere. Interestingly, it was speculated that in order to make it work, Capcom had to sacrifice 4 of the then 11 weapons. Regardless of the validity of that rumor though, the bow, gunlance, hunting horn, and jewel blades were all surprisingly missing from this game, but in return we got the first iteration of the Switch Axe. On top of that, the training school was replaced by the Colosseum, complete with arena quests that are much closer to what we know today. Monsters also gained the ability to inflict status blights on the player, and the first concept for a free hunting mode was featured in the form of Mogga Woods, a single-player hunting area with no time limit or cart limit. Capcom would then release a new portable game for the PSP, this time Portable Third. Much like the other portable games, it was based on the first game of the generation, however this time there were quite a few more changes than usual. Subspecies which had been completely missing from Monster Hunter Tri were back, with many of the new 3rd gen monsters also getting a subspecies. The game also had a different hub village, this time centered around hot springs as opposed to an island. All weapons also made a return this time around, including the brand new Switch Axe, bringing the count up to 12, and each had numerous additions to their moveset or mechanics, but oddly underwater combat was completely removed in this version, even though many of the locales were the same as Tri, but several of the maps had to be redesigned to accommodate this change. The old Comrade system also made a return, and now for the first time you could bring 2 felines out with you on a hunt. Instead of the feline kitchen, you had the drinks feline, who was a hot spring attendant that would offer the hunter special drinks in order to receive a buff before the hunt. Portable Third also introduced everyone's favorite Thunderwolf Zinogre, so now you know where he comes from. Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate then marked the beginning of a time where the franchise would move towards portable titles being the norm. With the G version of Tri, it featured the usual G-Rank expansion with new quests, weapons, and gear, but also introduced 2 new monsters, the flagship Brachydios and the Elder Dragon Dire Moralis, as well as several subspecies. Cha-Cha makes a return as our ever-faithful companion, but this time is accompanied by another Shakalaka called Kayamba. This gave us 2 companions to hunt with, much like Portable Third. Most of the features removed from the jump from Tri to Portable Third are back, including the ability to free hunt and underwater combat, although this would be the last time that we would see it. The Hunters for Hire system also made its debut in 3 Ultimate, allowing you to send friendly hunters on quests for a small fee to get extra materials and supplies. What's also surprising is that we saw many features added to the game to accommodate the new platform. The debut of the target camera allowed you to lock onto monsters and keep them in your vision. This was especially important because the 3DS lacked a right analog stick to control the camera. Instead, the bottom screen of the device featured a virtual D-pad, which many hunters found a bit awkward to use. But peripherals like the Circle Pad Pro were an easy way to combat this, even being bundled with special editions of the game. The 4th generation of Monster Hunter began with the goal of putting a much stronger emphasis on the story and the overall adventure of the series. Up until this point, each game had a pretty non-existent story, and Monster Hunter 4 was the first attempt at doing something a bit more complex. Following the journey of your fledgling hunter, you immediately find yourself defending the port town of Val Harbor from a monster attack. Interestingly, with your efforts, you're invited to join the Caravan with a capital C, whose leader, the Caravaneer, had a mysterious artifact in his possession. Your travels together would take you across the world to discover the mysterious origins of this artifact, and along the way you run afoul of the stalking shadow Gore Magala. This ongoing rivalry is present throughout the game and ends with an epic showdown that feels much more personal due to this build-up. Now, quite clearly, this change in pace was a success as Monster Hunter 4 sold over 4 million copies in Japan alone. Oddly though, it was a Japanese exclusive, and it wouldn't be until its G-Rank expansion that fans worldwide would get to play it. The developed narrative wasn't the only change though. There were 14 new large monsters to hunt, including the absolutely massive Dalamador, and we also got the last 2 weapon types, bringing us up to the current number of 14, adding in the Insect Glaive and Charge Blade, although other weapons also got some brand new moves in the game too. The environment design would get an overhaul, featuring more vertical environments, and for the first time we could finally mount monsters by performing new aerial attacks. Feline comrades also would make their return, this time as palicos, with the system being the basis for what we have today. The worldwide release of Monster Hunter 4G would also become known as Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate, kicking off the 4th generation for fans across the globe. As was the norm, this expansion on the base game would include G-Rank, and it came with some new monsters, and among them included the prickly new flagship Seregios, or as you may call him, Steve, and they added in Gogmazios, who unfortunately has never been seen again. He's most notable for the giant ancient Dragonator lodged in its back, which was another example of Capcom trying to push the storytelling. There was also 3 new endgame mechanics that really set this game apart from the others. The first was the weapon honing, a system that let you specialize endgame weapons in one of 3 ways, adding either increased attack, defense, or lifesteal. The second was the Apex Monster system, and this is the result of a monster infected by Gormagala's Frenzy virus that managed to survive its effect. This resulted in monsters taking on a purple hue and a massive increase to their damage with hardened skin that would make all attacks bounce. They gained other defenses such as an 80% reduction to overall damage taken, immunity to traps, and immunity to status and elemental damage, and in short, they were near impossible to kill without the right tools. And this is where Wise Stones came in. These handy items would allow you to temporarily increase your effectiveness against Apex monsters, depending on which one you applied to your weapon. There were 4 in total, allowing you to increase your damage or defense, as well as remove the guaranteed bounce, or allow you to do status or elemental damage respectively. The third new endgame feature though were the Expeditions, a brand new take on the free hunting system of past games. This let you hunt in the Everwoods, a randomized map that you wouldn't know the layout of ahead of time. Monsters would spawn in periodically, and upon hunting and gathering supplies, there was a chance to be awarded with guild quests. These were randomized quests that would drop powerful relic gear that allowed you to slot in powerful relic-only decorations. The cool thing about these quests though is that they were repeatable, and you would gain levels each time you successfully finished them. This would steadily increase the difficulty of the monster, as well as the rewards until they were well above even G-Rank, allowing truly devoted hunters to grind for perfect gear. And then we have Monster Hunter Generations, known as Monster Hunter Cross in Japan, which was an experimental entry in the franchise. It's not quite a spin-off, and we saw the return of the 3 main villages from each of the Portable and Freedom games, on top of a 4th new village that you could switch between at your leisure. It also introduced 4 different hunting styles as a new gameplay element. The first was Guild style, that resembled the mainline games, featuring all of the original movesets and allowing you to equip 2 of your hunter arts. There was also Aerial style that let you hop off monsters in the air, giving each weapon new aerial attacks at the cost of some of their grounded moves. The Adept style encouraged a perfect evade playstyle, dodging at the last second to perform powerful counterattacks. Meanwhile, the Striker style would diminish some of your regular moveset in exchange for 3 hunter arts, and you could charge them up faster. There was also the 5th option of Prowler mode that allowed you to play as your Palico. They had a different moveset completely, consisting of the different Palico skills you had available, and featured some beginner-friendly mechanics such as extra carts, unlimited stamina, and increased speed. Touching on hunter arts though, these were new flashy moves that required the full arts gauge to use. These were, however, incredibly effective at dealing damage, countering attacks, or supporting the hunt in different ways. The game also featured not 1, but 4 flagship monsters, known collectively as the Fated Four. You may already know of them, it's Glavenus, Astalos, Mizu, and Gammoth, all in the same game. These aren't the only new additions though, as the new deviant monsters also made an appearance. These aren't to be confused with subspecies, as these were unique monsters with their very own movesets and required special tickets to access their quests. There was also a different take on empowered monsters that was present in the form of hyper monsters. This caused the monsters to stay in their enraged state almost indefinitely, and would cause one of their body parts to emit a black mist. Attacking this part would charge up your arts gauge faster, but the monster also gained access to new devastating moves when attacking in return. And next is Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate, or Double Cross as it's known in Japan. This was the G expansion for Monster Hunter Generations, and it would be the first time since the 3rd generation that it returns to a home console. It featured 2 new hunting styles on top of the original 4, adding Valor style that was a style that started off weaker than others, but then through the building up of your gauge you could enter Valor mode, giving you an enhanced version of the guild style moveset, as well as letting you absorb incoming hits with a unique sheath-based playstyle. Alchemy style was also added as a support-focused playstyle, letting you create a wide range of useful alchemy items after filling the alchemy gauge, and then shaking the barrel a number of times. The game of course added G-rank quests, as well as the jet engine Elder Dragon Valstrax. Fashion Hunters also finally got a transmog system, allowing you to change the look of your armor, which was a first for the series at the time. Then in January of 2018, Monster Hunter World would release to critical acclaim, and for the first time ever, worldwide fans could enjoy the game together with a global release and unified servers. With its departure from the mainly handheld systems, Monster Hunter World was able to exploit the full power of the 8th generation of consoles, boasting higher fidelity and a more realistic art style to bring the world to life. Monsters now actually felt like part of the ecosystem, being given idle animations and behaviors to make them fit in, as well as exciting turf wars if they happen to cross paths with each other. The game perfected many of the systems added to the series over time, with expeditions expanding on the free hunting system, tempered investigations following up on previous endgame activities, and World's more robust story taking the narrative goals of the 4th generation to even greater heights. There were numerous quality of life updates made to existing systems, and new features such as the scout flies to help streamline the hunting experience without sacrificing too much of its depth. Loading screens also became a thing of the past, and skills and decorations were revamped, ditching the point system in favor of a smaller one that would allow for greater freedom when building armor sets. Each of the 14 weapons got a facelift as well, with brand new combos and in some cases, complete overhauls to the way they play. There were also plenty of new additions like a whole new suite of monsters designed specifically for the new world, such as the Elder Dragon Eater Nergigante. It also added the cinematic Siege event quests that took place on their own unique maps. There were even new utility items such as mantles that helped spice up that versatility, as well as being able to find and fire different slinger pods from the environment to shoot at both monsters and environmental traps, providing different effects. While Monster Hunter had a cult following beforehand, it was World and its expansion of Iceborne that truly brought it into the mainstream, outselling the series prior in its entirety just by itself. Iceborne is the expansion to Monster Hunter World, which was similar to G expansions of the past, but ultimately shedded that namesake for the foreseeable future. It added enough content to rival the base game, and included the new Master Rank quests of higher difficulty, and a brand new icy region called the Hoarfrost Reach, with the snowy hub village of Celiana alongside it. Many of the newcomer monsters to World also gained subspecies, and several Elder Dragons were added into the game, including the frigid new flagship monster Velkhana. The game received several updates over its lifespan, adding a repeatable endgame grind in the form of Safi'jiiva's awakened weapons, with the final update masterfully culminating in an epic showdown against the original big bad of the series, Fatalis. The 14 weapon types got even more new moves, and the slinger was improved to add the addition of the clutch claw, which is a divisive mechanic amongst the player base, as many consider it to be disruptive to the overall flow of the gameplay. You see, the clutch claw allowed you to grasp onto the side of a monster, sort of riding it for a short time. From here you had several options like tenderizing a monster, which would apply a wound allowing you to exploit it for increased damage. You could also launch monsters into walls with slingers to topple them over, but the time-consuming nature of these actions was at odds with the fact that it was optimal in most cases to do them. And this is perhaps why so many people didn't like this addition. But despite this, Iceborne would go on to be Capcom's best-selling expansion of all time, selling 14 million copies. And then we return to handheld games to the Nintendo Switch this time with Monster Hunter Rise. It's a game that bridged the gap between the new and old generation of games. Much like Generations, Rise would take extra creative liberties in order to mix up the gameplay. The core feature of the game was the new wirebug system that allowed hunters to be more agile and aerial, zipping around quickly. The game would thematically revolve around Japanese folklore, with many new monsters being based on different Japanese yokai. Its flagship, Magna Marlow, was designed around the idea of a fallen samurai's armor, with the purple flames it emits being reminiscent of Onibi or will-o-wisps. Despite the design style of the maps trending more towards the earlier generation of games, Rise did retain the seamless gameplay present in World, but it also utilized much more verticality than previous titles, as the wirebug could be used to traverse much more quickly and efficiently. A new class of hunting companion was also introduced alongside the palicos, and these were the palamutes, which are wolf or dog-like creatures that could be ridden freely into battle. This would further increase your hunter's mobility. Each of the weapons also received major changes to their moveset from World and Iceborne, with various mechanics implemented to help tailor your playstyle even further. Similar to Hunter Arts, Rise introduced these Silkbind attacks, which allowed you to perform flashy special moves. You could also switch out key abilities on the different weapons using the switch skills system, and this gave each weapon a number of different playstyles. Also new to this game were the Rampage quests. These were tower defense-esque quests that had you defend several gates from different waves of monsters. Hunters could build different defenses at set installation platforms, and even summon key characters from the story to do devastating attacks on the monsters. Completing these Rampage quests would allow you to upgrade weapons with Rampage abilities, letting you ramp up weapons with extra stat bonuses and special effects. And then we have Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak introducing numerous enhancements and new content to the base game. Departing from the Eastern themes present in base Rise, we instead travel to the Elgato Outpost, which is our new Master Rank hub inspired by medieval European aesthetics. These European themes would be present throughout the game, with the first main trio of monsters all taking inspiration from classic Western horrors. The flagship Malzeno is based around the classic myth of a vampire, with a gothic appearance and life-draining abilities. Interestingly, Sunbreak would also introduce Frontier series monsters into the main line of games, namely including Espinas. There were several changes to the gameplay, including adding the ability to switch between two switch skills, even mid-hunt, allowing you to vary your options depending on the situation. Follower quests were also added in, letting you partake in quests alongside NPC hunters from the story. Getting into the endgame would also unlock a new endgame loop, taking on anomaly quests. These special assignments pit you against afflicted monsters, which are empowered monsters that have glowing red body parts. These parts would charge up and result in a powerful explosion, dealing massive damage to your hunter, so it was important to target them specifically. But defeating these monsters would net you afflicted materials, allowing you to craft the highest tier of weapons and decorations in the game. Content updates later down the line would then take this concept further by adding in risen elder dragons, each with their own unique armor sets. And finally, we come to the future of Monster Hunter with Monster Hunter Wilds on the horizon. We're entering a new generation of Monster Hunter, and from what we've seen so far, it's looking like it will not disappoint. Like many of the previous games on the list, it is the best blend of old and new ideas. The addition of completely seamless and open field hunting in a massive interconnected map as well as open questing with your friends without having to head back to camp is a welcome change, and one that ultimately makes sense for the progression of the series. The brand new focus mode and focus strike system allow for greater maneuverability and aiming, even more so than ever before, and wounds are a great answer to Iceborne's tenderizing mechanic, enhancing your hunt as opposed to replacing it. Most of the weapons are better than they've ever been, receiving major changes to their kit, although rip the insect glaive and its bounce, at least as we know of right now, and the ecosystem itself has been painstakingly crafted to create a living, breathing world with much more detail compared to any other game. Between riding across the map on your new sacred mount, discovering the secrets behind the flagship Arkveld, and the Forbidden Lands, they've revamped a variety of existing and old mechanics like fishing, cooking, and camping. They've really pulled out all of the stops for Monster Hunter Wilds as a fresh new entry in this beloved franchise, and we can't wait to see exactly how things turn out. Well, that is every mainline game in the Monster Hunter franchise to date. Tell us in the comments if you've learnt anything new or what your first Monster Hunter game was. But make sure you are subscribed because we will have more videos on Monster Hunter and your favorite games coming very, very soon.